The first letter came in autumn. Margaret found it folded among grocery flyers, its envelope smudged with rain, the return address blurred beyond reading. It wasn't the handwriting that startled her. It was the postmark. June 15, 2016. Sentenced the day after Emily vanished. She sat at the kitchen table, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, and opened it with shaking fingers. Owen, don't worry if I'm gone a few days. I think I finally understand what's been happening. I'm meeting someone who can explain it all. Please trust me. I'll be okay. Ellamy. Faintly of lake water and soap. Selectively called Sheriff Price before the words had even sunk in. 1. The postmark. Receptions. The sheriff came within the hour. He held the envelope to the light like it might confess something. Resignation confirmed the stamp was genuine, but impossible to trace. Someone had dropped it in an after-hours box, no cameras nearby. Could Emily have mailed it herself? He asked gently. Margaret shook her head. No, she would have called me first. The handwriting looked like Emily's, but too steady, almost rehearsed. The lab later found nothing. No prints, no DNA, not even saliva on the flap. Whoever sent it had been careful. 2. The second letter. Week later, another envelope appeared. No return address again. Time, it was postmarked August 2016, 2 months after she'd gone missing. You were right, Mom, about the bridge, about the noise that night. He said it wasn't supposed to happen this way. Pressed the paper to her chest like it might still be warm. Sheriff read it twice, jaw tight. He said, "Who's he?" No one knew. The FBI took both letters, ran every analysis they had. The conclusion came back the same as always, inconclusive. The third letter, 3, the reporter. That fall, a journalist from a regional paper, Lena Brooks, came to town. He's read about the case on Reddit, the photo, the truck, the letters, and wanted to write a piece on America's forgotten disappearances. Margaret didn't trust her at first, but Lena had a softness about her, a quiet empathy that felt genuine. She recorded their interview in the living room, the ticking clock loud on the tape. What do you want people to remember about Emily? She asked. Margaret smiled faintly. That she wasn't a mystery, she was a person. After the article ran, 2 more envelopes appeared. Identical handwriting, no return address. One was blank inside. The other held a single sentence. Check under the bridge before the frost comes. 4. The discovery. Sheriff Price ordered a new search of the creek before winter set in. Valuated waded through freezing water, combing the mud. By afternoon, they found something tangled beneath a submerged branch. An old Polaroid camera, rusted, the strap caught in weeds. Submissive. It took days to dry the film. When the photo finally developed, most of it was ruined. Water stains, streaks of light. But in the corner, barely visible, stood a blurred figure in a black cap. Emily's reflection was faintly visible behind him. The photo was dated June 11, 2016. Slim. Blackmail. The tape. Menstrual. Akin asked if she could include the photo in her follow-up article. Pensions agreed reluctantly. When the story went online, it drew attention from old leads. People who'd known Emily, people who thought they'd seen the truck. Sidelines. One anonymous email came to Lena's inbox at 2 a.m. If you want the truth, listen to the tape. It was never about the bridge. No one knew what it meant. But the same day, Margaret received one more envelope, postmarked from a city 3 hours away. Missiles and a cassette tape, labeled in shaky handwriting. Later, June 12, for Mom. Unmistakes, the cassette. Margaret didn't have a cassette player anymore. The world had moved on. Phones, streaming, everything digital. But that small rectangle of plastic felt heavier than anything she'd ever held. Sheriff Price brought an old player from the evidence room. They sat at her kitchen table again, the same place where she'd opened the first letter, the same hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. He pressed play. The tape hissed before a voice emerged, quiet, shaky, but unmistakable. "Hi, Mom, it's me." Breath caught. "I don't know if you'll ever hear this. I just wanted to say I'm okay. At least, I think I am. I met him again today, the man from the truck. He says he can help me understand why the photos keep coming out wrong, why I see things that no one else does. He says some people don't belong in one place forever." Was a pause, the faint rustle of fabric. "He asked me to meet him by the bridge tonight. I know how that sounds, but he promised it would all make sense. If anything happens, please know I was trying to find the truth." Then a soft sound, maybe wind, maybe footsteps, and the click of the tape stopping. That was all. 7. The voice analysis. The FBI analyzed the recording. It was Emily's voice. 98% match. No background noise that could be traced. No second voice. But there was something strange. Near the end of the tape, between the clicks, the technicians found a faint hum. Rhythmic and metallic. Polluted. An old power generator, maybe. Or a pump. Price thought of the abandoned quarry a mile north of the bridge, where an old water plant used to be. They searched it top to bottom. Nothing but rust, weeds, and silence. 8. The doubt. By winter, the letters stopped coming. Michelle. No more envelopes. No new clues. The case began to fade from headlines again. Margaret kept the cassette player on the counter, like an urn. Sometimes she'd replay the first few seconds, just to hear that voice again. "Miss, hi Mom, it's me." She'd close her eyes and imagine Emily somewhere safe, older, different, maybe living quietly, maybe watching from far away. Timestamp visit every few weeks. They didn't talk about the case anymore. Sometimes they just sat in silence, drinking coffee that went cold between their hands. 9. The reporter's visit. Stemmed. In early spring, Lena returned with something new. A man had sent her a message through her article's comment section. Said he used to see a black truck parked near the water plant at night, always around the same time, always facing the trees. He'd never reported it because nothing ever happened. They went to the site. The ground was still soft from thaw. Sidelines a line of birch trees, half buried in mud. They found the remains of an old campfire, charred wood, melted glass, and a rusted thermos. Shameful was a folded scrap of paper, burned around the edges. Only 2 words were still visible. I tried. That sheriff sealed the thermos in an evidence bag, his hands shaking slightly. Conflicting didn't say a word. That night, she sat by the window while rain traced slow lines down the glass. She whispered into the dark, "I know you tried, sweetheart." Out's thunder rolled softly over Maple Creek, the sound of something unresolved, still moving beneath the quiet surface of the town. Time doesn't stop in small towns. It just folds in on itself, until yesterday and 10 years ago feel the same. In Maple Creek, the missing posters had faded by the second winter. The bridge was repaired, the road repaved, and new families moved in. People who didn't know the story, who didn't know her name. But those who'd lived through it carried the silence differently. 1. The aftermath. Margaret Carter stayed. She told herself she couldn't leave until Emily came home, but deep down she knew the truth. She couldn't leave because this was the only place Emily still existed. Her house became a kind of shrine. The porch light stayed on every night. The kitchen clock still stopped at 11:47 p.m., the time the sheriff believed Emily's phone last pinged the tower near the creek. Neighbors brought casseroles for a while, then just sympathy, then nothing. People get tired of grief. 2. Sheriff Price. Sheriff Price aged faster after the case. His hair thinned, his temper shortened, and he started keeping his badge in the desk drawer instead of on his chest. He'd drive by the bridge sometimes without meaning to, instinct more than duty. The town had renamed it Carter Crossing after a petition from the high school, but even the sign felt heavy, like a question no one could answer. Price once told a deputy, "You don't close cases like this. They just stop bleeding." The deputy didn't know what to say. 3. Chloe moved away after graduation. She went to college 2 states over and didn't come back. But every year, on June 12th, a single envelope arrived at Margaret's mailbox. No note, no return address, just a photo printed on plain paper. A landscape, always different. A lake, a streetlight, a bus window. Each one had the same caption scribbled on the back. For Emily. Margaret never asked who sent them. Some part of her wanted to believe they came from her daughter herself, traveling somewhere far and free. 4. The town's memory. The diner where Emily once worked now had new owners. The wall clock was gone, the counter repainted. Only the old waitress, June, remembered her. Sometimes she'd tell the new kids. She used to sit right there, camera around her neck, always smiling like she knew something we didn't. They'd nod politely, not really listening. At the library, Emily's photography exhibit was still stored in the back room. Dust had gathered on the frames, but once a year the librarian cleaned them and whispered, "Still watching over us, aren't you?" 5. The anniversary. On the 5th anniversary of her disappearance, the town held a candlelight vigil by the creek. Not everyone came. Some didn't want to reopen the wound. Others said they'd already made peace. But those who stood by the water that night, Margaret, Sheriff Price, a handful of old friends, felt the same ache as before. The water was calm. The candles flickered. And for a moment, The reflection looked like someone was standing just beyond the bridge's edge, watching. Margaret closed her eyes. "If you can hear me," she whispered, "you don't have to come back. Just rest." 6. The quiet. By winter, the snow covered everything. The bridge, the signs, the fields beyond town. Maple Creek slept again, but sometimes, when the wind was right, the people living nearest the creek swore they could hear a camera shutter click in the dark. Just once, then silence. The year Emily would have turned 26, the phone rang at the sheriff's office just after midnight. A man's voice, slurred and thin, said he wanted to confess. He said he knew what happened at the bridge. Sheriff Price didn't recognize the name at first. Calvin Brooks, 39, worked odd jobs, lived alone on the edge of town. No criminal record, just parking tickets and a reputation for drinking too much. Still, at that hour, a confession was a confession. 1. The interview. Calvin sat in the small room under the harsh fluorescent light, hands shaking as he held a paper cup of water. His eyes were red, not from tears, but exhaustion. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said. "I was just supposed to meet her. He told me to." Price leaned forward. "Who told you?" Calvin rubbed his face. "The man with the truck." Every nerve in Price's body went still. "Black Ford F-150. Calvin nodded. "He said she wanted to talk. Said she'd seen something she shouldn't have. I just drove her there. He said he'd take care of the rest." Price's throat tightened. "Take care how?" Calvin didn't answer. 2. The details. He knew things that weren't public. Emily's blue notebook, the rope found in the truck bed, the faint hum on the cassette tape. Price felt the ground shift under him. He called the FBI that night. For the first time in years, it felt like the story might finally end. But the next morning, when they came to take Calvin's formal statement, he was gone. His apartment door stood open, a pot still boiling on the stove. On the table lay a single scrap of paper. He said, "I talked too much." 3. The search. They combed the woods for 2 days before finding his truck half submerged in the quarry pond. No sign of Calvin. The engine was still running when it hit the water. Inside, officers found a small cassette player. The tape inside had melted from the heat, but the label was still legible. June 12th, same night. Price held it in his hands for a long time, the same way Margaret once held the first tape, as if it might burn through his skin. 4. The voice on the news. The story made local headlines again. Reporters called it a break in the Maple Creek mystery, but there was no break, just more questions. Margaret didn't want to see the coverage, but one clip found her anyway. A news segment replayed on a neighbor's TV. In the background of the reporter's audio, there was a faint voice caught between the static. Soft, distant, almost childlike. It said, "Don't trust him." The station claimed it was interference. Margaret wasn't so sure. 5. The last visit. Sheriff Price visited her again that week. He looked older than she remembered, his eyes ringed with sleeplessness. If Calvin was telling the truth, there's still someone out there. Margaret nodded, staring at the rain. And if he wasn't? Then maybe he believed he was. They sat in silence a long time. The hum of the refrigerator filled the room, steady and low, like the sound from the cassette all those years ago. 6. The note. 2 days later, a letter arrived at the sheriff's office. No return address. Inside was a single photo, the bridge at night. In the corner of the image, a reflection caught in the water. A woman's face, eyes closed, faint as moonlight, On the back, one line, written in familiar handwriting. It was never him. Price didn't show it to Margaret. He just placed it quietly in the case file, between the notebook and the tape, and closed the drawer. Winter lifted slowly from Maple Creek. Snow slid off roofs, the river thawed, and the bridge creaked back to life beneath the thawing ice. Sheriff Price was cleaning the evidence room when he found the old camera bag. It had been logged years earlier, water-stained, almost forgotten. Inside, beneath a film roll and a cracked lens, was a micro-cassette no one had noticed before. Label faded, but one word still legible. Listen. 1. The playback. He brought it straight to Margaret. She didn't say a word, just nodded, set the kettle to boil, and waited while he found an old recorder. The tape hissed, then a voice. If you found this, something went wrong. Emily. I thought he wanted to help. He said there were things under the water, faces you could only see through film. I told him I didn't believe in ghosts. He said they believe in us. A pause, wind across the mic. Mom, if you ever hear this, don't look for me by the bridge. That's not where I am. Static swallowed the rest. 2. The background. When the FBI filtered the audio, they caught faint echoes. The splash of water, a low mechanical hum, and, beneath it, a voice whispering 2 syllables, almost lost. Maple, plant, the old water treatment plant by the quarry. The same one Price had searched and found nothing. He went back. Inside, the air smelled of rust and mold. Graffiti covered the walls. At the far end, near a broken grate, the floor had collapsed into a dark pool. There, half buried in mud, they found Emily's silver feather hair clip. The second one, identical to the one from the truck. No body, no clothing, no further clue. Just the small glint of metal catching the last of the afternoon light. 3. The town again. News spread fast. For a few days, Maple Creek remembered her again. Photos in shop windows, candles by the creek. But the excitement faded as quickly as it came. People prefer closure, and there wasn't any. Margaret refused interviews. She kept the clip on her nightstand beside the tape player. Some nights, she'd press play, let the hiss fill the room, and whisper back, I didn't look for you there. 4. Sheriff Price. Price retired soon after. He left the case files boxed neatly in the records room, each one marked Unsolved. Before locking the door, he placed the microcassette on top. He didn't write a report about it. He simply added a note in pencil. Her voice was enough. He drove past the bridge one last time, watching the river run clear beneath it. For the first time in years, he didn't stop. 5. The voice returns. Months later, a new family moved into the Carter house. They kept Margaret's old porch light. It was built into the wiring, and sometimes, late at night, it flickered on by itself. One evening, the teenage daughter found a cassette tucked behind a loose floorboard. She played it out of curiosity. A girl's voice, calm, steady. Hi, Mom. It's me. Then silence.